Hello and welcome to the Power Platform Architecture series for Power Virtual Agents. This is session 2 of the series. If this is the first session you've joined us with, please go back and look at the introduction because that will tell you a bit more about what this is all about. But to quickly summarize what we're here to talk about, this series is designed if you're an architect, developer, an IT professional. If you're planning to implement a Power Virtual Agent solution or want to know what you can do with it, this is the series designed for you. The content is there to help you understand a broad range across how implementing the product works and how you can take best advantage of it. So the content is divided up into separate sessions. We'll talk in a minute about what we're going to talk about today. And it builds up into a complete architecture. You'll see the diagram we refer to in each session. We're building a complete solution that works from end to end with Power Virtual Agents. So before we start, we're both members of the Power Platform Customer Advisory Team. My name's Matt Farmer. And with me today, I have Abhi Rathinavelu. Abhi?
Hi everyone, my name is Abhi Rathinavelu and I work with Matt Farmer in the PowerCat team, focused mainly on Power Virtual Agents and helping our customers to be successful in PVA. I'm so happy to be joining with you guys in this session.
So Abhi, do you want to tell us what we're going to cover today?
Okay, let's get started. So today's session we call it as the Build the Bot session. And the Build the Bot session is mainly focused on you as the bot author and what are the various capabilities you can leverage within the tool that is the Power Virtual Agent service for authoring your topics, triggering the right content for your end user of the bot, and not only that, but also measure the performance of the bot across your various entry points and show the ROI of the bot to your business stakeholders. With that, I have a lot of content to cover, so let's get started with the top level overview of the PVA stack. So the main the key components I wanted to cover as part of this particular slide is when you go into PVA, you are talking about building these topics, and topics are basically the intents with which the bot is able to recognize what the user wants to know and then redirect them to the right answer node or the content, as you may say, right? So within that, you see that we have these user topics and we also have an additional components called entities. And these user topics and system top, and the other one is the system topics, right? So the user topics are the ones which you as a bot author will be going and defining it as per your business scenarios for your bot. Whereas the system topics are some generic inbuilt topics that we ship as part of PVA, which will take care of the standard bot conversations like a greeting or an end of conversation survey, so on and so forth. And similarly, we also have this concept of entities, which will help you to really optimize this conversational experience. And we'll see more and more of how we are going to do that in the upcoming slides, right? And all these business topics, this entities, the custom entities, whatever you build here is going to be surfaced to the end user through what we call as the channels. So the channels are just the entry points from where the bot will be exposed to the end user. So if you are an organization, you might be exposing your bot once you build it in your website, or it could be a Teams channel, or it could be an app, right? So there are various entry points. So we have all these integrations built in out of the box in PVA in a very easy configurable way, and we'll see a little bit more of that later. And finally, the other.
Sorry, Abhi, just to call out, those channels aren't. That's not a definitive list, right? There are lots of other channels that PVA also supports. You just can't fit them all on the screen.
And yes, that is correct. These are only the 3 channels which are listed here, but there are multiple other channels, including voice, omni-channel integration, and a bunch of other channels which you can use, like Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, for where you can build the bot in one place and then access it everywhere. And we'll talk a little bit more deeply about the channels as part of this session in the later slides as well, right? So with this overview, let's jump into the actual meat of what you as a bot author will be doing, right? The one key thing here as a bot author is you will be authoring this various topics as per your business needs. Now, as an architect or as a designer for the bot, uh, there are various sources from where you can find out ideas or source ideas like what are the topics that needs to be built. Right? This could be from a wide range of inputs, like it could come from your business, or it could come from, let's say, if you're building a CX bot or let's say a support bot, right? It could come from your call center, like what are the most often asked questions, right? And if you're building something for your internal audience, it could come from your business stakeholders. Like let's say you're building a HR bot, it could come from your HR team, like who are deciding like what are the various topics that needs to be built. And all these topics, once you collate that, what are those key questions that bot needs to address for the end user, you will be going and building those topics over here. So let me just give you guys a quick overview of the interface itself, and then familiarize with you with the PVA as we walk through this session. So once you log into powerva.microsoft.com, you have the option for accessing your bots, and this is the bot which Matt was talking about. If you go to the top right corner, if you see the list of bots, I have this bot called PVA architecture bot. So this is the out of the box bot which we are going to ship as a sample for you, which you can take and import it in your environment, and then you can access this bot. And this bot has a bunch of topics which we are going to talk about in this session and in other sessions, and you can utilize that as you follow along, right? So we talked about topics. So topics, all the key capabilities are over here. You have the topic list, which is a top level view of all the various topics you have. And you can see here in the topics, it's a mix of multiple type of topics. You have the user-defined topics. You also have the system topics like the greeting topic, escalate topic, which we just talked about. Which you can, and the key thing about the system topics is you cannot delete them or edit them. They're part of the bot itself. Whereas you have the full control over the user-defined topics. And apart from that, there is also another set of topics what we have called what we call as the bot framework composer topics. We'll cover it in a separate session on that. But for this discussion, let's talk mostly about the user-defined topics and the system topics, right? So in this particular scenario, you have these three small icons over here. From here, you can directly either go to the authoring canvas where you can actually start updating the topic, or you can go to the analysis related to the topic. So those are the two options here. And you also have an option to make copies of the topic or delete a particular topic, right? So the key thing to note here, especially the guidance you want to give your bot authors as an architect, is not always you are going to work on a topic which is already live in production, right? So you might want to create copies of the topic. You might want to work on a draft version, then make it as a ready version, go live version, so that you can be ready to turn it on. So that's where this status option comes into picture. The status which says on, what it means is that this topic is now available for triggering by the engine, right? So if you turn it as off, the engine will no longer be able to, the AI engine will not be able to recognize this, and it will not be able to trigger this. Whereas, so that way you could potentially have a topic and turn it off and then still work on it in the offline mode until it is ready for being shared with the rest, right? So that is one way to think about it. And as you can see here, the topic is a very easy to use interface. The topic building itself is very easy to use interface. You have this top in the bottom left corner, you have this test your bot option, which will basically give you ways to, as you build the topic, you can just test it out, right? So, and you have this track between topics where you can say like, see the flow of that execution of the conversation, right? For in this case, you can say something like local branch, which is one of the topics. It's not necessarily, it has to be the exact same thing, right? You can also say like local store, and then you can just let the bot trigger the right topic here, right? And it directly came to this particular stage. It came to this particular part where it's asking like, hey, I can help you with this. Now tell me which city you want to know the details about. Right?
Abhi, just quickly, I think we should probably emphasize that because not everybody gets that about the way topics work. I mean, I think of topics as like almost a funnel because those trigger phrases you mentioned there, it's not an exact match, right? It's using the natural language engine to say what are all the synonyms with these phrases, and then let's try and funnel the user into the correct bit of functionality. And people often miss that and think they have to put every single possible thing someone could say into those phrases.
Yes, that's a great point, Matt. So yes, one of the key capabilities, or I would say like fantastic feature what we have in PVA is that all this model which is running behind is pre-trained. It's already enriched with a lot of these business use case scenarios, tasks, words, and also the customer support related name data or the training data, right? So you are not actually needing to do a lot of training for these bots as you build out these topics. Whereas in a traditional scenario of bot building, you will be actually training your models individually for your own scenarios. Whereas this model is pre-trained. So all you are doing here is just giving a few reference points through trigger phrases so that the model can, and the model is already smart enough to identify what is your intent, what are you talking about, and then taking you directly to that particular topic. And if you really want to know more information about how this works, definitely I would recommend you to search up and read on AI on Scale in Microsoft. So we have some really great presentations on how this AI model works if you want to understand more about that, and how we are really leveraging the cutting edge capabilities of Microsoft Research to power Turing, like to power the Power Virtual Agents triggering performance, right? We also have this capability called entities along with the topics and trigger phrases, which will help you to extract specific information regarding that user and then directly take that user to that particular part of the dialogue tree or the conversation instead of avoiding repetitive conversations, right? So that is another key thing which you want to know. And these entities, there are not only like standard entities like age or city or those kind of very standard scenarios, but we also have like ability to build your own custom entities using the custom entity tab. You can define a specific entity, and then you can try to extract it whenever the user is talking about that. Right. So these are some key capabilities. We'll do a little bit of a deep dive on this as we continue further. Let's come back to the topic authoring itself. And the third one is remembering the user responses. The context is a very key capability here, where you have the capability to remember the user's response in a particular conversation and persist it across multiple conversations. So we have capabilities like bot variables, which will do this for you, so that you can collect, let's say, the user's name in one topic, and you can persist it in that same topic. And whenever the topic is shifting to a different topic, you will still carry the information on the user's name, and then you can use that particular user's name even in the second topic in a much more personalized way. Right?
So you should only have to ask them for it once, right? You should, what's your name, Matt Farmer? I should never have to say that again.
Yes.
Because you'll store it. Yeah.
Yes. So that way you can actually have these global variables, which are like very powerful. You can use it across the various topics and all through the bot, right? Mm-hmm. And that saves you one additional question you might potentially have to ask the user every single time you want to take them through that flow. So the other part here is topic authoring is not only something which you can do in the Power Virtual Agents portal, but it is also something which has been embedded as part of the Teams experience. So that is the second thing which I wanted to talk about. So we see a lot of our customers are not only building bots for external facing uh, organizations, but also like these bots are internal facing in the sense you're building. We've seen customers building bots for like their HR teams, their IT help desk, like your finance teams, like so that they can answer the employee queries. And the best way to reach the employees is through some tool which they're already using, like in this case, Teams, right? And that's why we have this capability which has been added in Power Virtual Agents as part of Teams itself, where you can actually go to Teams, search for the Power Virtual Agents app, and then install it, and then start building the bot directly from the Power Virtual Agents interface, very similar interface in the context of team. And then you can share that bot with your team. And if you want, you can also share it with your whole organization. Right? And in terms of the extensibility points, you'll be having a deep dive on each one of these areas. But I wanted to call out one of the key powerful features of PVA is how it plays well with a lot of these other existing Power Platform services and even bot framework. As you know, the storage for all these topics is going to be the Dataverse for Teams. So that is where, which used to be formerly called as the Common Data Service or the CDS. So that is where all this topics which you are creating will be saved. So that gives us the flexibility of taking all that information, putting it in your CDS or a Dataverse environment, and then later if you want to move the bot or do some kind of DevOps process, you can align with the solution framework of Dataverse and then do the import export. So the seamless governance also is available for these bots. Right? So that's the other part of it. And apart from this, there is also integration with Power Apps itself. From the Power Apps canvas itself, we can call the PVA bot. There are a lot of flexibility there as well for scenarios where you involve, you want to use the PVA in the context of the Power Apps. So these are some things to keep in mind as a topic author as you're going and building these topics. It's not only about building this standard topics within PVA, but how you can integrate with all these external options here. And going forward, I want to talk a little bit more about the concept behind the topic authoring itself, right? Like, why do we author topic? What is, as a bot author or as an architect who is giving guidance to your business users who are going to use the bot, how do you create the right mental model for your bot authors to build the topics, right? So we look at it in a two-step approach, right? The way the handles the incoming queries. One is the bot has to detect the correct intent so that, and as it detects the correct intent, the bot should be able to take you to the right topic and deliver the best possible response, right, in a quick fashion, so that the user's query is correctly answered by the bot, right? And the more and more the bot does this, the credibility of the bot will increase, and the user will try to find more information within the bot itself. Right? How do we get there? Right? The way to get there as a bot author is following the best practices. Right? And we will talk about a little bit about these best practices later. But there are a few key things you will have to keep in mind as you build these topics as a bot author, whether in how you structure your triggering phrases, right, and how you design your conversation using the bot designer canvas, right? What are the various best practices you can follow? So that will really help you to optimize your bot in a way that all these topics which you're building are really answering the right questions for the user and then providing the best possible experience, right? Because if the bot is not able to provide these two things consistently, the user is going to lose the credibility of the bot and they're just going to skip the bot and try to go and talk to the human agent, right? We don't want to go there. So that is why this is two fundamental principles I want you to keep in mind as you are building these topics for the bots. Okay? And as we move towards the actual topic building itself, right? We talked about these actions, we talked about trigger phrases. They're all coming under these three big buckets. One is the design of the topics. Second is the adding the right trigger phases and entities to optimize the topic. Third one is again building a conversation path that is very optimal so that it takes the user to the answer in a quick possible way. So designing the topics, as I said, there is a lot of sources for signals in terms of where do we find out what are the topics that needs to be designed. But the thumb rule here is wherever you feel that there is a high volume of user queries, right? Either in your contact center or in your internal process service desk, IT help desk, which can be potentially answered without a human intervention, right? Which can be potentially automated. Those are really good candidates for the bot topic. You want to do the 80-20 approach here, right? So the lot of your queries to your contact center or to your internal business departments are around the 20% of those topics, which will give you the biggest bang for buck if you want to build those topics within as part of the bot. So this 20% will result in the 80% of your volume of your queries which come to you. And that will help you to identify what are the high value topics you want to add in bot and then automate that or put it as part of the topics. And then accordingly,
sorry, Abhi, I just want to call out on that one because I mean we talked about kind of iterative approach in the last session, but just quite often customers will think that they have to take a massively waterfall approach with this and design every answer to every question that they have, and that's not necessarily. I mean, what you say, the 80-20 rule applies here, right? It's almost one of the best things they can do is say, well, what are the things that, you know, the 5 or 10 topics that are really, really important that we get so many questions for a day?
Yeah.
Put the bot together and deploy it and get it out there and see what effect it has. You can always add more stuff later, but you don't have to make it perfect first time. You just have to get it out there and see what effect it has on your business as quickly as possible.
Yes, absolutely. And one more thing which I wanted to call out here in this great segue, but one of the key things I want to call out is, PVA does really well in, conversational experiences. When I say conversational experiences, like multi-turn question and answer type of scenarios where you ask the user, find out their response, depending on that you take them to a different flow and then try to solve their issues, right? So many times we see that people are trying to use PVA just as a Q&A bot, right? Like just as a FAQ type of, I'll ask a question and immediately you can answer it. Well, you can definitely do that as well, but that will not help you to address some of these high value topics, which are your most call drivers, right? Like your most like the transactional topics. For that, you really need a multi-turn design where you can have this back and forth. Let's say a user comes, he wants to, let's say, find his account balance, right? You want to you want to make him log in, you want to find out his account history, then you just show him the balance. There's a bunch of steps which you can do, which you cannot do in a Q&A type of use case, right? But these kind of transactional use cases might be some of the most time-consuming use cases which are costing more money in your call center, right? Because it takes more time for the agents to figure all these things out. So that's why I'm saying that always look for those high value actions which have the highest volume. Go for the top 20% call drivers and then automate them first as part of PVA. So that you can get a more ROI for your bot initially, right? And finally, the third part is, like, as I said, we talked a little bit about entity management, action management, and topic creation. And also the other part here is it's a collaborative effort, right? It's not like you just assign a bot to one person and they build all the topics. That's why we have this option to share the bot with the multiple users, and they can actually go in and start building these topics, and you can really democratize this process. You don't need the data scientist to actually handhold or anything, but rather a business user can just go in and then start building their topics with the drag and drop canvas what we have. And within the topics itself, we talked about a few concepts here, like trigger phases, system topics, user topics. Apart from that, there is also a few other things, which is like the suggested topics. We'll go deep into that. It's just nothing but a feature which will help you to mine topics from an existing content and bootstrap your bot so that you can have a set of topics to get started right away. And this is something you can use if you don't have much time to build the topics in a manual fashion, right? And also we have something called a fallback topic, which will handle the scenarios for which when the bot is not able to find the answer. And there is also an option for go to topics, which will help you to switch to a different topic in the middle of the conversation. Okay? By the end of the conversation. So those are a few things. And composer topics, recently it went GA, but that's another option for you to build topics using bot framework composer with the additional capabilities. Let's say if you want to add like rich content like adaptive cards, you can use those bot composer topics to build that and then import it within PVA. And there is a separate session, as Matt said, covering this, session 3, which will give you more details on that. And same thing with the dialogues. We have different types of nodes. Some of the most common nodes which we use as part of the bot building is the message node. And you also have the condition node and the question nodes and the action nodes. And apart from that, there are a few other system related nodes, like as I said, the end of conversation node, which is taking you to the end of conversation system topic, and the agent transfer node, which takes you to the system topic for escalation, and finally an authentication node. Wherever you want the end user to authenticate, you can configure this and then you can authenticate that user. Right? And now you build the topics, you have a good idea of what are the topics to look for, and you figured out like, okay, these are the set of topics I want to create. Okay, now how do I do the triggering part of it? The second part we talked about, right? The triggering in entities. How do I define the right set of triggers? How do I make sure that these entities are in this right set of entities so that the user, when they come in with the query, they're able to be taken to the right set, to the correct intent. So internally, this is what happens in the PVA bot. As a part of the NLP process, we have a process to do the normalization of the incoming query. So any kind of case normalization or like a singular plural, all those scenarios are handled by the bot itself. So what that means is you need not go and do these variations as part of your entering the trigger phrases, right? So the bot will identify that you are talking about the same thing. So that is saving you a lot of manual work. So that is taken care of for you by us as you're entering these trigger phrases. So let's say if you want to looking for like, I want to buy shoes, or you are just saying that, you need not do a capitalization or lowercase or things like that. So all those things are taken care of. And then we do the entity extraction. So as part of the user query, if there was some information which is matching with the predefined entity, either it could be a system entity or it could be a custom entity that you yourself defined as a bot author. If there is a exact match, so then that information is extracted, and we use something called slot filling, which is another NLP concept. What it does is it will take you to that specific answer node directly without asking you additional questions. So this is a good thing. We'll talk a little bit deeply about this as part of covering the entities, but I will definitely want to show you a small demo of how to do that. But after the entity extraction happens, then the user, the AI model will be able to take the user to the correct intent. The intent triggering happens, and the topic will be presented to the user, right? And based on the trigger phrases, you might actually directly land on the topic, or you will end up on something called what we call as DYM, or did you mean? So which is nothing but, it is not a failure. That is an important point to note. It is just that the bot is trying to clarify whether you asked about topic 1 or topic 2. And we'll talk a little bit more about when does the bot does that, right? So that is also another thing which you want to talk about. And after you get into the topic, the slot extraction kicks in the sense, based on whatever entities which are already extracted, you might be able to take the user directly to that specific entity's node directly and get that answer. A simple example is like, like if you're asking like in that architecture bot, there is a simple example like, I want to find the state, I want to find um, the stores near me, right? So the bot asks the question saying that, okay, what is your city, right? But if let's say my user query already says the city information, says something like, I want to find the stores near Seattle, then it will directly take you to that information related to Seattle. So that is a simplified version. We'll see a little bit more complex variations of that as well as we go along. But something to keep in mind. So this, what does that do is it saved you one question to ask for the user, right? It took the user directly to that particular answer for Seattle, though the user has already. So if the bot is asking, like, let's say if you're entering a user query which says, find the stores near Seattle, you don't want the bot to ask again, like, which city are you from, right? So that is not intuitive bot. Right? So then again, the user has to type the Seattle information. So that is the kind of scenario you can use entity extraction and slot filling very effectively, so that when the user mentions that city information, the slot filling kicks in, takes the user directly to that particular node, right? And depending on how the topic has been designed, what are the conditional nodes used, what are the question nodes used, the route is selected, and finally the response is given. All through this process, you see these two things. One is the context or the dialog state. So the context is very key. We talked a little bit about global variables, right? Like how we can persist the information of a particular, like a username across multiple conversations. All that is used as context as this flow happens, right? And based on the dialog policy that has been inbuilt as part of the AI engine. So the context will be persisted across all these flows so that when this triggering happens, this context is used, entities are used, slot filling kicks in, the right intent is triggered as part of the trigger phrase match, and then finally the user gets a response that he is looking for. So this is what is happening in the internals, right? So knowing this will really help you to optimize how you are going to build these topics and then making them optimal.
Right? The thing I would call out on this, Abhi, is actually it's really useful to know this stuff is going on. But when you're actually building the bot, you don't need to worry about this stuff.
Exactly.
It's all taken care for you. Quite often, sometimes you get an issue with customers where they're trying to second guess this or assume that they have to do some of this stuff. The really great thing about this is it happens almost silently when most people use it, and particularly in my case when I'm demoing the spell checking because my typing is so terrible. But it's the combination of those things together getting you that response that almost magic, it just happens without you having to think about it. But it's very useful to know what's actually going on under the hood.
Yes, that is true. The whole thing is a black box for you as an end user. You remember what I talked about initially, like the key purpose of authoring the topics, matching to the right intent and providing the best possible response to the user 1 and 2. All that is happening magically by the tool itself as you build these topics. So you need not know much about what is all these things, right? It's just about having the right tools so that you can just be systematic and keep executing on building these topics. So let's jump into a few best practices around triggering to start with, and what does it do? So as I said, it helps you to match the correct topic to the user, and it also helps you to avoid repetitive questions and also enables a faster conversation. How it does that is by a concept called trigger phrase matching, right? So when you use the trigger phrases, as I told you, the model is already like pre-trained, right? So let's say you have trigger phrase 1 and 2 for topic A and trigger phrase 3 and 4 for topic B, right? So if the user query is very semantically closed to trigger phrase 1 and 2, one or two, then the user will be directed to the topic A, right? So that is an exact trigger match. So the user will get the answer for that particular topic. That topic will kick in. But what if topic A and topic B have very similar looking trigger phrases, right? So that is when there is a what we call as a trigger conflict, and then the bot or the bot engine, the AI engine will ask a question to clarify the user, hey, did you mean about topic A or did you mean about topic B? Right? And that is what we call as the DYM or did you mean. Right? So the best practice here is when you're using this building this trigger phases, try to keep them as unique as possible. Of course, a maximum of 5 trigger phases is more than enough for conveying your for training that particular topic to trigger the topic. But however, if you are going to avoid more unique wording phrases across these topics, let's say you have something like Power Platform, right? If you're putting Power Platform in all the topics, topic A, topic B, topic C, the bot, the AI engine will have a tough time to disambiguate between whether you're talking about topic A or topic B, right? So it's more like helpful for you if you remove that kind of repetitive phrases and rather focus on the actions as part of the, or the action verbs as part of the trigger phrases. So that will help the bot to really identify the right trigger phrases. And then
that often comes up when a customer's using kind of trying to put like complete sentences and things like that in the triggers. You know, you see that and they're trying to be very grammatically correct and include the brand name. You don't need that. You're just trying to, you know, funnel it down to the essence of what someone's asking so that we can disambiguate.
Yep. And the good news is we are by end of March or April, we are very actively working on a capability which we're calling it as the confusion matrix, which will help you within the bot itself to be able to identify if you are entering overlapping trigger phrase, right? It will warn you and tell you that, hey, you are entering a trigger phrase which is very similar to another one, right? So that way you can really optimize this trigger phrase experience as well, so that you can proactively fix this even before it hits your production, right? So that's another thing to do. And the next part is the entity part. We just talked a little bit about entity, how it's useful for extracting information. And in the simple example, I told you that about we have like both system entities, predefined system entities, like we have around 27 predefined entities, common ones, city, state, date, age, etc. Right? And then we also have the custom entity option defined by the author. The key thing for entities, at least what you need to know is around whenever entities, we are currently the way entities is set up is entities will not help you with the triggering enhancement. It is more about skipping the question and then getting to the right answer node. Right? But there are few features we are currently working on which will help you to even improve the triggering. But currently, don't mix up entities with the triggering part. It's more about skipping the question and taking you to the right user. So in this sequence, in the simple example, what I'm showing in this picture, you can see the user's incoming query is, I would like to book a business ticket to Seattle, right? Remember my flowchart, what I was showing, as the incoming query comes in, one thing happens is the normalization. Then the second thing which happens is the entity extraction, right? So if you had already defined a custom entity which says like ticket types, right? And then you already called out business, ticket, economy, or first class. So the bot will be able to know that, okay, hey, he's talking about a custom entity called ticket type. I'm seeing business ticket. And he's also talking about one more entity, which is the system entity, which is called the city system entity, which is Seattle. So let me go to that particular node, which will take him to which will provide him the information about business tickets for Seattle, right? So you have, in this particular step, you have avoided two questions. One is you should have asked what is your what class of ticket you are trying to book, then which city you are trying to go to, right? All those two questions have been skipped. Directly the user gets the answer. So that's the way the entities really bring value to the conversation or the topics, where you can directly go to the particular answer without having to ask repetitive questions. Similarly, like how it does that is by the process what we call as the slot filling. Once the entity gets extracted, right, the AI engine will look for what is that slot that can be filled in the dialog tree. If there is already a slot which says like business ticket and Seattle, then it will directly take you to that particular slot, and then it will try to get the answer for that. In this simple example, you see what I've said, like what kind of transportation you prefer, and there are three options here, like airplane, bus, and train. But as an end user, I didn't choose to click the option. I rather went and typed flight. Right? However, there is a smart match which is allowed in the entity, which helps me to understand that you're talking about aeroplane, and it will take me to the aeroplane related options. Right. So this is the slot filling which is happening in that particular context. Right. That is for the current variable which you are trying to fill. But there is also a slot filling for future variables, which we call as the greedy slot filling, which is what happens when in my previous example, as I said, right? When I say like I would like to book a business ticket to Seattle, it will no longer ask what kind of transportation you want to go. Rather, it will directly take you to it will no longer ask you what type of class you want to book the tickets on, because it already picked the information that you want a business ticket. So it does a greedy slot filling and directly takes you to the business class node. Right. Okay, now we will show a quick demo. We'll see a quick demo of how to use this entity extraction we just talked about in the actual topics. Right. So here, once you log into the PVA and you selected the PVA architecture bot over here, and if you go to the topics, you have this multiple topics here. There is one such topic, stores near me. Let's open that one. So click on this icon here. It says go to authoring canvas. It will directly take you to the authoring canvas. And if you look at this topic, you have the trigger phrases, and apart from that, it also has a set of questions here, right? Like it says, like, I can help you with that. Then it asks a question saying that what city you are near, and then once the user provides that information, it is actually stored as a system entity. So if you look at the entities here, you can see that city is one of those pre-built entities. So as you build the topics here, you will be able to select one of those system entities, and in this case you chose city, and then that will recognize any kind of city which is actually being entered as part of the user's query, and the bot will directly try to do a slot filling. Right. So in this demo, we'll show like how that greedy slot filling. We talked about current variable filling and then greedy slot filling where the future variable is filled, right? So we'll see how that is happening. Right? So in let's say I'm a user, I'm coming and directly typing in my query, local stores London, right? Now in this user query, I've already mentioned which city I am from, right? So that information is already provided. So the bot should be smart enough to identify that you already provided that information, that that entity value is already in your user query. It will extract that entity value automatically, and it will take you to that particular node specific for London, and then it will provide that information there, right? And if there is a conflict in terms of the options, like if there are two similar Londons, then it will provide you an option like what is the right location you're looking for, and then it will take you there. So let's enter this value here. Local stores in London is the incoming user query. The normalization has happened, and after that, it directly takes you. It understood that you are talking about city, but the key thing, if you look at the flow here, it missed one important question. One question here, which it is supposed to ask, right? It is supposed to ask like what city are you near if it goes in the normal flow, but because of the entity extraction and the automatic slot filling, it did not ask the question which says what city are you near, because it already figured out that you're talking about London. Instead, it directly went to took London, it called this particular action, and then it gave these two options, which says that, okay, which location in London are you looking for? It is London, Ontario, or it is actual London. And then the user says like, I'm talking about London, and then according to that, it will call that action, and it will just take you to that respective node which has the information. And after that answer is shown, it is taking you to the end of conversation node, which is the system topic, asking you to fill the survey. Whether it answer a question, you say yes, and then it will ask you to provide a CSAT, which is the customer satisfaction survey of the ratings, and then that is when the conversation ends. So if you look at this whole flow you see here, once the information London is provided, that is the city entity, is provided as part of the user's incoming query, the entity extraction kicked in automatically, thus the greedy slot filling also happened automatically, so that the user was not asked that additional question like which city are you
well, it did. So Abhi, it did ask the question, but it only asked it because it didn't know whether you were London or London, Ontario, right? So
yeah.
So if you did Seattle, which I don't think there's another Seattle anywhere, it would have just jumped straight forward and called Power Automate straight away.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. So in this particular scenario, especially there were 2 Londons, so it had that question, but otherwise it would directly go to that address and then it will show you the answer. That's right, Matt. You're right. Next one is the suggested topics. The suggested topics here is, as I said, is a quick or easy way to bootstrap your bot with a lot of topics. If you have a FAQ page, which is publicly available, you can enter that information directly in the bot and the URL, and then you can point it to it. So let's quickly take a look at that as well from the bot itself. I won't go through the whole thing, but I think it's worthwhile for us to see how that works. So these are the existing topics, but there is also another tab called suggested topics, right? So these are the ones which will be mined after you point to the actual website. In this scenario, you can say that, okay, let's say I want to get started. You can just say such a topic, you can enter the link. So I won't enter the whole thing here because it takes some time to mine that topics. But the idea here is you could potentially point to any public facing website, which is in a FAQ format, get them and then import it into in the topic format. It's mainly singleton topics. That means it will have only a question and an answer, like very straightforward. You trigger that particular topic, it will directly show you the content. So in that format, it will be able to generate, and then you can promote that topics back into the bot. The key thing here is it's not only for web content, but also for documents, right? Like a PDF or docx or CSV. Let's say if you have a CSV or a docx file, right? You could potentially put it in a public, host it in a public facing site, and then point it to the suggested topics, and it will generate the topics. The other way to do that is also like if you don't want to use suggested topics, you could also think about using the fallback topic we have, which can be integrated with Q&A maker using Power Automate flow. So that gives also an flexibility in case you already have existing information in Q&A maker tool where you already generated these Q&As. You don't want to redo the work in suggested topics. So in that case, you could directly point the Q&A maker questions into the PVA using Power Automate flow, because Power Automate flow has those inbuilt connectors for Q&A maker. So these are a few ways to handle suggested topics. Again, the fundamental principles apply here as well, right? Suggested topics, when you generate, when you are going to promote it to the main as an existing topic, you do have to ensure that the trigger phases are unique enough for the topic to be triggered correctly. Just because it's auto-generated doesn't mean that the trigger phases are going to be unique. So there is going to be like overlaps within the topics which are generated as part of the suggested topics. So you will have to do that scrub manually to make sure that your trigger phases are unique. And after that, once we have the confusion matrix capability, all these features will be able to see that automatically and make those corrections.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, we talked earlier about the kind of 80-20 rule here. We suggested topics is one of the first things you can do if you want to get a bot out there really quickly and start, deflecting and seeing how a bot behaves. But you do have to go through and scrub those triggers when you do it.
Yep. And the other thing here is the channels. Channels is as I said, build in one place and deploy in deploy everywhere. So that is really true with the PVA in the sense you have this central bot which you can build, but you can deploy it in mobile. You can deploy it in your own custom website. If you want to do in custom website, we already have a widget code. We can just copy paste and put it as there. Or you can actually build your own custom canvas direct line with connection and then deploy it. And on top of that, if you don't want to use your own canvas, you want to use some of these existing channels like Teams or Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp, you could potentially use that as well to be able to support the bot. So WhatsApp is not supported yet directly through PVA. But if you have an omni-channel, Dynamics 365 omni-channel, some of these channels are available through omni-channel as well, like WhatsApp and voice integration, which you can do for PVA bot as well. So you could potentially, when you're using PVA in tandem with omni-channel integration, you could potentially have like an IVR experience which can be handled by the PVA bot. So very, very straightforward scenarios for some of these channels. For a lot of the other channels which are not supported out of the box, like for example, if you were talking about Telegram or Twilio, those kind of channels, we provide some sample code for building these custom adapters, which is available as part of the GitHub and the documentation. So you will need to build that custom adapters to be able to talk to these channels. And those channels, whichever you are onboarding to, they will also be able to should be able to understand the escalation signals which are coming from PVA, the various signals which are coming from PVA, so that if at all there is a handoff scenario, right, like a human agent handoff or those kind of scenarios are involved, PVA will be able to hand off in a seamless fashion within that same canvas of that user. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And other key important feature here, which is especially pertaining to the internal facing bots, is the web channel security. A lot of bots, enterprises would deploy bots within Teams or within their own SharePoint site. They don't want the bots to be accessible from outside their organization, right? So they don't want somebody to get hold of the bot URL and then hit it from outside and get the information. So for that, we have added this capability called web channel security, which will help you once you enable it. It will require you to have a token to be able to hit the bot service. So you could potentially write your custom canvas code or connection so that you can use the you can perform the token exchange before you can allow the user to connect. So if anybody else is trying to hit the same bot from outside your organization, they will not be able to do, because this requirement for token will block them from accessing the bot. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you want to do this kind of as an architect. If you want to shut down your bot being accessed from outside your organization, these are some options which are available out of the box for you to do.
That one's also super common in public-facing bot scenarios, right? Where you've got a bot on your website, but what you don't want somebody to be able to do is embed your bot on their website or something like that. Use web channel security to make sure it can only really be called from your website itself. Yep,
absolutely. And finally, after you build these topics, you set up everything, the security, you set up the channels, everything is good to go. You need to know like what is the performance of the bot, right? You need to know the ROI of the bot. You need to be able to show the business stakeholders how your bot is doing, right? What kind of topics it's answering, how much of resolutions it's able to handle. All that information is available as part of the analytics tab, what we have. And this tab has the standard bot metrics which are used across the industry, like the resolution rate, the escalation rate, how many topics were escalated to the human agent, right? And then the abandon rate, how many people abandoned the conversation midway. All that information is captured out of the box. You can see the session volumes, how many sessions happened over a period. And this dashboard gives you the 30 days data out of the box. And you can also see the CSAT information of what is the customer satisfaction. If you remember that 5-star rating which I did, that will help you to identify what is the overall satisfaction of the users. And the good pivot here is you can go drill down to the topic level to see like which are the topics which are performing well, which are the topic which are not doing well. For example, let's say if you have a topic which has the highest abandon rate, so probably the content needs to be improved there, right? So you might want to go on, or if you have a topic which has the highest escalation rate, that means most of the people who are coming to the topic are going to a human agent. That's an opportunity for you to explore if there is an action you can build to automate some of these actions so that they need not go to the human agent. So that's the way for you to interpret these metrics and then make them really optimal for your organization. And you can also download the raw information of the sessions, the actual session transcript from the sessions tab. It's available in the form of a CSV file. You can download it for your manual review and taking a look at the session outcomes. And the same information is also stored in the CDS, that is the Dataverse, under the conversation transcript entity if you want to access it from there. We do have later sessions which talk a little bit more about custom analytics and more advanced analytics you could potentially do if you want more information beyond what we show in the dashboard.
Yeah, we're going to cover that in a bit more detail in another session, Abhi. Yeah, good call.
Yeah. So that pretty much covers what I had for today. So in summary, what we covered today, how to generate topics, how to author topics in optimal way, how to set up the trigger phrases in an optimal way so that the user is not confused, and how do we use leverage entity extraction so that we can help the user to skip questions and directly take them to the right answer node, how we can leverage analytics and channels to analytics for tracking the performance of the bot, channels for building a bot and then displaying it in multiple channels and then maximizing the usage of the bot. So I hope you guys found this session useful. And,
thank you, Abhi. Thank you, Abhi. So this was session 2 of 6 sessions we've got for on Power Virtual Agents, and hopefully you've got a really good understanding of the basics of how PVA works, and actually some quite advanced understanding of how PVA works under the hood. Please remember to like and subscribe, and also ask questions in the channel so we can help with that. If you've not downloaded the example solution, please do that so you can follow along as we're going through sessions. So thank you very much, Abhi, for all that content, and we'll see you in the next session. Thank you very much.